All right, let's explore this issue further now and look at the influx at universities. We speak to University of South Africa CEO, Dr. Phethiwe Matutu, who joins us live now. Good afternoon to you, Doctor, and thank you so much for your time. The issue of space is not new. We hear about it year on year, and we are back here. How can it be dealt with once and for all?
The issue of space requires much more infrastructure at all levels, at the university level, at TVET college level, community colleges that we have, that would at least eliminate the kind of demand that we are seeing now versus the supply.
Is it just about building more, or do we need a different approach? I hear you speak about infrastructure, but if you can break it down for us so that we get a sense of what exactly does this entail?
According to our national plan, it has been found out that the universities constitute a whole lot more than what the percentages should be between them and TVET colleges and community colleges. So these TVET colleges, together with community colleges, are supposed to be the ones which are constituting more students. In that a university-trained graduate is serviced by many in terms of the workers. So we require more of such, the TVET colleges and community colleges and other types of training which are aligned with our economy and our societal needs.
And I wonder how much of a concern is it for your organization that once again here we're seeing a number of learners who would have passed very well with bachelor passes. We're only seeing just over 200,000 spaces across institutions for some 200,000 first-year students, but there's just over 100,000 who are potentially in limbo, even more when you think about the numbers. How concerned are you about this?
There's more in terms of the availability of spaces. We do have the private sector within higher education institutions, and students are encouraged to look at the private sector opportunities, private higher education.
But we know that when you look at our country, for example, the demographics, if you think about a private university, it's more pricier. And you speak to students whose parents simply won't be able to afford this, if they cannot even be able to afford, public universities in some of these instances. In other instances, some of them fall within the missing middle, for example, and then they will not be able to even afford this kind of money that private institutions are asking for.
That's an issue of affordability, not availability of spaces.
But that's why I'm saying that if they consider, pardon me, I understand what you're saying.
Availability of spaces.
I understand, pardon me for coming in there, but I understand the issue of affordability. But this time we're discussing the issue of availability. If you say, as you start, that private universities should be an option, how so for many of the learners right now who cannot even afford to pay a registration fee?
Those learners who cannot afford to pay registration fee certainly cannot go to private higher education institutions. However, we have learners who are coming from model schools where they've got parents who are paying, and we have learners who are coming from the IEP schools who have got parents who are paying. So what we are saying is that there is higher education which is private. It is an option. We do have the post-school institutions that we have within the country, and we have the community colleges. There are sitters as well, providers who do offer skills provision.
Let's speak about public university, students, those who fall under DBE. Where would they go?
You are talking about students who want to go to
Yes,
public universities.
who say that, for example, we want to go to public universities because we cannot,
Yes.
we don't fall, within the IUB range and all of that. So what then becomes the option for such? Because you think about TVET colleges, they're crying about space right now. You think about the fact that universities also say they don't have space. So someone is watching us tonight and they're saying, we are desperate. We're waiting for a response.
Yes.
Where can I go?
Right. Okay. Firstly, the public universities, as we speak, they are not full. There are those who are offering spaces for late applications, and there are about 10 of them. And out of those 10, 3 are prepared to take in walk-ins. So it's important that one looks at those institutions and what they have to offer and the spaces which are available and apply in those areas where the spaces are available. There will be areas where they are saying we need people who can get into science, people who can get into business, accounting. Institutions such as your vendor are concerned about science and have got provision for that. Institutions such as University of Limpopo had mentioned science together with commerce and accounting. Institutions such as TUT were announcing for ICT. Institutions such as UJ were announcing for the diplomas and certificates. So there are 10 universities. I don't know whether you want me to mention them together with those
if you can,
where students can have walk-ins. So the 10 universities where they had spaces are CPUT, DUT, MUT, TUT, Rhodes University, UJ, University of Limpopo, UNISA, UniZulu, VUT. Out of these 10, 3 are prepared to accept walk-ins: CPUT, Rhodes University, UniZulu.
And when it comes to another issue, for example, a quick search on the websites of some of these universities shows, for example, Wits University charges 100 Rand for local students when it comes to application fees, 700 Rand for foreign students. An application fee at the University of Pretoria, is also looking at those who come from a household of lower than 150,000 Rand per annum. It is waived there, but there's around 100 Rand and 300 Rand for those who are outside the SADC region. When you look at UCT, there are some of these institutions that have simply waived this application fee, but others are saying that you still need to pay for this, and yet you are not guaranteed space. Is this still justifiable that they pay these 100 Rands in 2025 when they are not justified that they're going to get space?
The key issue is not about getting space or not getting space. It's about how to charge, the principle that a university uses for the payment of its services. So there are a number of options when it comes to these principles. Other universities have decided on the user pay principle, where if you are photocopying material, then you must pay for that material. They have standardized their printing machines, their photocopiers in such a way that you do that. For such universities, they will force whoever is using a service to pay for the service. And for some universities, they will use cross-subsidization for that kind of a service.
But what about the application fees?
Their councils and what they have approved in terms of the nature of the costing and how they manage their fees.
But what about the application fees? Because that speaks about somebody that's already in. What about the application fees? Because you've got students who are saying that if you're going to be charging 100 Rand and you have maybe, for example, let's see, reports that are suggesting that Wits, for example, received 140,000 applications for the 2025 academic year, but there's only space for 6,300 new students. There's 100 Rand that has potentially been charged. Of course, different amounts apply. And a lot of them are not going to get in. So are these 100 Rands justifiable?
Do you know what they are for? I think let's start there.
Exactly. Let's just, if you can tell us if they are justifiable, maybe you can tell us. That's exactly the point we're asking.
I think that's what we need, where we need to start. Therefore, the costs which are incurred by the university in the processing of the applications and the processing of the offers, and they entail the staff costs, they entail the IT costs, the subscription costs, and whatever expansion which is required. For you to take the numbers that get to that level, you have to have quite a big system which has to be quite stable. So at the end of it, they are not for people who are going to be accepted. They are for processing the applications, because when you are not accepted, you should be able to understand why you have not been accepted when you inquire. And that means someone has been processing your application. Yeah. The question is, which we must be asking ourselves, should there be cross-subsidization, or should there be institutions which are paying for this application fee?
Especially because
that's the question we should be asking ourselves, not the question of how fair it is for someone who has not been accepted to be charged. So the reason, because their application has been processed.
The reason I ask this, in about 20 seconds, we're out of time. The reason I ask this is because you do have institutions that have waived this and have decided that the application fee must not be paid. Then you say that there are others who are processing, the letters that they need to send to students, processing and all the applications, etc. But then why is it not a uniform decision that says for these universities, do you accept or do you not? Because students are watching this to say, if others can waive this, why can't others?
When it has been waived, you must know that the principle there is cross-subsidization by the university. That's a principle which is approved by that university's council. When it has not been waived, the principle is the user pays principle, which means that for the activities of that university, the user has to pay for the service.
All right. So certainly, as you say, a lot still needs to be spoken about, because you do have student organizations who are calling for uniformity here, but also at the same time, they're looking at a number of the students, prospective students, that is, who come from poor families who simply cannot afford this. But let's talk more about this as institutions then are closer to opening and see what happens there, and even the issue of funding at some of these institutions, and how do you begin to address it. Appreciate your time this evening. That's University of South Africa's CEO, Dr. Phethiwe Matutu.